Imagine you're sitting in a room, 8 feet by 10 feet. No windows, no clock. The walls are bare. The chair beneath you has no arms, no cushion, and it is bolted to the floor. You have been here for 6 hours, maybe 8. You cannot tell anymore. The fluorescent lights never dim. The temperature is slightly too cold, and you cannot leave. You think this room is just a room, a neutral space where questions get asked and answers get given. You are wrong. Every square inch of that space was designed to break you. The dimensions, the lighting, the furniture placement, the missing clock behind your head. None of it is accidental. This room is a psychological weapon, and it has been pointed at you since the moment you walked through the door. Welcome to the interrogation files, where power, psychology, and control are decoded, and you learn what they don't want you to know. Today, I'm going to expose the psychological trap built into every police interview room in America. I will show you 3 things. First, the exact design specifications that law enforcement uses to engineer confession, straight from their own training manuals. Second, the cognitive mechanisms these rooms exploit and why they work on innocent people. And third, how to recognize when the environment itself is being weaponized against you. By the end, you will never see a conversation the same way again. The blueprint for the modern interrogation room comes from one source, Johnny Reed and Associates of Chicago. Since 1947, Reed has trained more police interrogators than any other organization on earth. Their textbook, Criminal Interrogation and Confessions, is the Bible of American law enforcement interviewing. And buried in its pages are detailed architectural specifications for how to build a room that makes people confess. The dimensions are precise, 8 feet by 10 feet, large enough for 3 people to sit, small enough that the suspect cannot psychologically escape into empty space. Architects who specialize in police facilities describe it this way: a large room with unnecessary open space causes the subject to be less focused. Translation: a bigger room gives you mental breathing room. They do not want you to breathe. No windows, not to the outside, not to the interior. The Reed manual states that even if windows are covered with drapes, their presence decreases the desired sense of privacy. But privacy is not the real concern. The real concern is your connection to the outside world. Windows remind you that life exists beyond these walls. That reminder is dangerous to the interrogator, so they eliminate it. No visible clocks. If a clock exists at all, it sits behind you, outside your field of vision. The manual is explicit. Suspects are plenty defiant on their own without having a clock staring them in the face, reminding them how long they have been in the interrogation room. Time becomes elastic. Minutes feel like hours. Hours feel like days. And you have no way to anchor yourself. The thermostat is controlled from outside the room. You cannot adjust it. The temperature is typically kept slightly uncomfortable, often cold. This is not negligence. This is strategy. Physical discomfort accelerates psychological breakdown. Soundproofing meets a specific technical standard called speech privacy potential of 85. At that rating, even shouting through the walls would be unrecognizable. You could scream, no one would understand a word. The isolation is total. Now look at the furniture. Your chair is basic. No arms, no cushion, no wheels, no swivel. In many rooms, it is bolted to the floor with a metal cuff bar attached. The investigator's chair is different, mobile, comfortable, positioned to allow movement toward you or away from you, depending on the psychological moment. Here is where it gets surgical. The Reed manual warns that it is a major error to place any barrier between the investigator and the subject. No desk, no table between you. A guilty suspect will use that barrier as a shield and feel more confident when lying. So the table goes to the side. Nothing stands between you and the person extracting your confession. The observer, the second detective in the room, sits behind you, outside your peripheral vision. You know someone is there. You cannot see them. This creates what psychologists call a vigilance response. Your brain cannot ignore a threat it cannot monitor. One-way mirrors are positioned at exactly 5 feet from the floor. The manual specifies this height so that the subject cannot see his own reflection when seated. Why does that matter? Because seeing yourself reminds you of your own identity, your own autonomy. They want you to forget who you are. Recording equipment, according to Reed guidelines, should be concealed and surreptitious unless required by law. The reasoning. It is not the act of recording that inhibits truth-telling. It is the constant reminder that causes guilty suspects to stick with their earlier lies. Notice the assumption. The manual presumes you are guilty. The room is built for that presumption. This is what the architecture does to your brain. Dr. Saul Kassan of John Jay College has studied false confessions for over 30 years. He describes the core strategy in simple terms. Police isolate the suspect in a small, windowless room, a non-supportive environment that increases the incentive to escape. That word, escape, is the key. The room creates psychological pressure. Confession becomes the release valve. The mechanism is called learned helplessness. Dr. Martin Seligman identified it in 1967. When organisms are repeatedly exposed to stressors they cannot control, they stop trying to control anything. The brain's default state shifts to passivity. Neuroscience research confirms that passivity becomes the unlearned response to prolonged aversive events. In plain language, keep someone in an uncontrollable, stressful environment long enough, and they will give up. They will do whatever you want. Claustrophobia affects roughly 12.5% of the population clinically, but subclinical responses to confinement are nearly universal. Small windowless spaces trigger amygdala hyperactivation. Your threat detection system fires continuously. Cortisol floods your bloodstream. Your ability to think clearly degrades hour by hour. Dr. Maria Hartwig conducted experiments funded by the High Value Detainee Interrogation Group, a real government program. Her research on embodied cognition found that physical environments influence behavior non-consciously in metaphoric ways. When she tested subjects in rooms designed to feel open versus typical interrogation rooms, the setting dramatically affected how much information people disclosed. The claustrophobic room, the one that looks exactly like every police interview room in America, was exactly the wrong sort of space to get someone to divulge information truthfully. Here is the equation. Isolation plus confinement plus time equals compliance. Not truth. Compliance. The numbers prove it. Researchers Stephen Drezen and Richard Leo analyzed 125 proven false confessions. The average interrogation that produced a false confession lasted 16.3 hours. Typical interrogations last under 2 hours. 84% of false confessions occurred after more than 6 hours of questioning. 39% came after 12 to 24 hours in those small, windowless rooms. A 2016 study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences found that sleep-deprived individuals were 4.5 times more likely to sign false confessions than rested participants. 17% of interrogations occur between midnight and 8 in the morning. The room does not care if you're tired. The room was built for tired. Now watch how this plays out in real cases. 1989, Central Park, New York City. 5 teenagers, Black and Latino, ages 14 to 16, are brought in for questioning about an assault on a jogger. Raymond Santana is interrogated for over 27 hours. His videotaped confession is recorded at 2:30 in the morning. Corey Wise endures questioning for more than 30 hours. All 5 boys are held in standard police interrogation rooms. No windows, no clocks, separated from their families, deprived of food and sleep. Each one confessed. Each confession contained details fed to them by detectives. None of their DNA matched evidence from the scene. In 2002, serial rapist Matias Reyes confessed. His DNA matched perfectly. The Central Park Five had spent between 6 and 13 years in prison for a crime none of them committed. New York City paid $41 million in settlement. Dr. Casson testified that these were coerced, compliant false confessions, where each teenager calculated it was in his best interest to cooperate just to escape the room. 2006, Wisconsin. Brendan Dassey is 16 years old with documented intellectual limitations. He is interrogated on 4 occasions over 48 hours, including 3 sessions within 24 hours. Analysis of the transcripts revealed 1,525 questions. 98% of them contained and suggested the answers police wanted to hear. Federal Magistrate Judge William Duffin ruled the confession coerced and involuntary. Judge Diane Wood's dissent described psychological coercion, questions to which the police furnished the answers, and ghoulish games of 20 questions. No forensic trace of Brendan Dassey was ever found at any alleged crime scene. He remains in prison today. The Norfolk Four. 4 Navy sailors interrogated for approximately 10 to 11 hours each. Detective Robert Glenn Ford, who was later convicted of extortion in an unrelated case, poked them in the chest, yelled in their faces, called them liars. He threatened them with the death penalty. Each sailor confessed. DNA evidence pointed to a single perpetrator, who later confessed and stated he acted alone. A federal judge ruled in 2016 that by any measure, the evidence shows the defendant's innocence. All 4 received full pardons in 2017. These cases share a common denominator: hours in rooms designed to make resistance feel impossible. Here is what you need to know if you ever find yourself in one of these rooms. First, recognize the design for what it is. The small dimensions, the missing clock, the bolted chair. These are not budget limitations. They are tactical choices. Knowing this does not make you immune. But awareness is the first line of defense. Second, the Supreme Court has established your rights in these environments. Miranda versus Arizona in 1966 explicitly addressed what the court called inherently compelling pressures created by the in-custody interrogation environment. You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to an attorney. Exercise them. The court noted that without proper safeguards, the process works to undermine the individual's will to resist. The room is designed to make you forget these rights exist. Third, request breaks, request water, request bathroom access. These interruptions break the psychological momentum the room is designed to build. Interrogators want continuous pressure. Anything that fragments that pressure works in your favor. Fourth, understand that time is their weapon. Research shows confession likelihood increases dramatically after the 6-hour mark. If you have been in that room for hours and your mind is telling you to just say something to make it stop, that is the room working exactly as intended. That impulse is not wisdom. It is architecture. Fifth, remember that in over half of American states, police are legally permitted to lie to you during interrogation. They can claim they have evidence that does not exist. They can say witnesses identified you when no one has. The room amplifies these lies. Isolation makes you doubt your own memory. Do not trust claims you cannot verify. The contrast with other countries is instructive. British interrogation rooms permit windows. Recording equipment must be visible. The goal is information gathering, not confession extraction. Research found that under the British peace model, 0% of innocent participants falsely confessed in controlled experiments. Under Reed-style methods, that number was 50%. Same questions, different room philosophy, radically different outcomes. The interrogation room is not a neutral space where truth emerges. It is a machine engineered across decades to produce one outcome: confession, guilty or innocent. Every missing window is a choice. Every hidden clock is a tactic. Every bolted chair is a statement of power. The room speaks before the detective says a word. And it says the same thing every time. You are alone here. You have no control. The only way out is through me. Now you know how the room works. The question is, have you already been inside one without realizing what it was doing to you? You have been briefed. What you do with this knowledge is your call. If this changed how you see conversations, subscribe. Every interrogation follows a playbook. I will decode them all.